All right, you all came back to hang out with me a second time. And so my wife is here with me. And she was sitting in the front. And I told her, I said, they're going to be so tired of me after this morning. Nobody's going to come to this talk. And to see so many of you, it just means so much. But enough about me. This is all about you. And people are interested in how do you build supercharged applications, right? So in the description of this talk, I tell you that we're going to make some stuff. And we will, and I'll show you some code, and I'll show you some things, but this is part principle, part technical, right? So because there are ideas that I'm going to share today that will apply to whatever you're using, okay? It'll apply to whatever you're using. I'll just show you some examples of how we've done it on my team. During this morning session, I didn't talk at all about what I do and where I work, really, right? So I work on a team called the Angular team. Anybody heard of Angular? All right, that's quite favorable. Most people are like, Angular? Y'all still use Angular? People still make it? Okay. And so we've gone through quite a bit of a transformation. And I want to share some of the principles that we've been using to help Angular grow and to help Angular evolve that I hope can help you all. And if this screen goes off one more time, hold on. No one steal my password. Don't try to guess it. Okay, maybe if I click something, it'll keep going. Click. Okay, well, let's see. Great, spoiled my first joke. Thank you. Okay, so why is that title so long? Because I think the story is interesting but semi-long story. So I alluded to this. This will happen so far. And we talked about this morning, so I won't spend as much time diving deep into what it means to have AI be so present. I think we have that story covered. But it's still true that AI is here. But here's what else is true. Users still want powerful apps. Think about your user. They don't care what tool that you use. You hear what I'm saying? So think about if you work on a business application, it can be internal. When is the last time one of your internal users came to you and said, so, are you using Spring Boot, or are you using something, or using Java, or using Go? They don't care. What do they want? They want power. They want functionality. They want apps that help them achieve their goals. And this is also true. AI does not solve all of our problems. I could probably talk to each one of you, and you could tell me a story about how you tried to use AI to do something, and it did not solve your problem completely. I'm sure we all have that story, because it's true, AI doesn't solve all of your problems. So what else is there? What else is there? Here's my recipe for supercharged applications. You can apply this to anything, any frameworks, this recipe is universal because it's about how you build. Applications need to be performant. They got to have good developer experience. And I still think that a supercharged application has AI smarts in it. So let's talk about developer experience, because this impacts you directly. We heard this story for a long time on the Angular team. Anyone else ever felt this or heard this? Now, you cannot hurt my feelings. How many people still think that's true? Yeah, still. And this is real. This is real. Okay, this is a real part of the story. Angular's hard to learn. And this makes sense. This is what it used to look like. And don't try to read this code. But look at the volume of code. This was a hello world application. So right. It's okay to laugh. You can't hurt my feelings, I promise. This is hello world. It took all of this to get hello world on the screen. So of course, it felt like it was hard to learn. So the developer experience is suffering. This is what it takes now, which is a pretty significant impact. But how do we arrive at this conclusion? Well, we spent a lot of time talking to users. We spent a lot of time talking to developers and trying to key in on what was really important, which was developer experience for developers. We also thought about the syntax. Now, if you've never seen any Angular, this is about as clear to you as the comedian was to me. Nobody knows what's happening. I was just happy to be in the room when he was talking. I was like, oh, yeah. They're like, okay, ha, ha, that was so funny. I have no idea. Okay. But this is how you conditionally render part of a template. You have this thing with a star and some letters that says if the user is human, then you display this profile. Okay, not so bad. But then maybe you look at this else. Why is there a hashtag? Right? And I'm speaking from the point of view of somebody who's not seen this. And then the hashtag matches this other thing. I thought we were already in a template, but this says ng template, and then you display something else. So like this is incredibly challenging to parse or to look at the first time. Again, Angular is hard to learn. This is one of the things that we really had a hard time with, is how do we redefine what this experience is from a developer experience? Because if it is hard to learn, can you use it to build anything good? Mm-hmm. This is what it looks like now. Even without me explaining anything, I see some heads nodding. Some of you are like, yes, I can actually read this. I actually know what's happening. If the user is human, display the user profile. Else if, more conditional, you do this, and then you even have an else. That is very clear, very direct. This is going to reduce some of the technical debt that you might incur because people don't have to write bad code to try to make up for how bad the experience was. Some of you are like, okay, this is all right, but show me more. I got you. If you want to see more, let me hear you say more. Okay, fine, don't yell. Let's talk about like reactivity again. We're thinking about developer experience here. Let's think about reactivity. Reactivity is this idea that when the data or the state of the application changes, things start to happen as a reaction to that data changing. Okay, as a reaction to the data changes. So not imperative coding, but it's like, okay, the data changed, let me do the next right thing. So then here's what Angular had for a very long time. We had automatic reactivity through something called zones. Now, zone is this really magical, super magical concept. I want to tell you how good it sounds. Let me just tell you. Let me just trust me. Here's how good it sounds. What if you could have a framework that anytime the data changed, any data in your application changed, the UI updated by itself. No set state. No runes, nothing. It just changed. Doesn't that sound good? Yeah, we thought so too. But you know what happened? As applications scaled in complexity, that automatic changing, it began to break down and cause performance bottlenecks. And then it caused developers to be stuck having to understand the zone system. But people who were using Angular didn't come for zones, they came for Angular. How is that a good developer experience? Yeah, we know. It's okay. So this is another heart-to-heart. I speak from my heart all the time. No matter if I'm talking about tech or life, it's always just honest. So I'll just tell you the honest truth about how we do things because it became problematic at scale. So then we came up with this idea of how could we integrate signals. How many folks have heard of signals before? Right. Signals are amazing, but I'll explain to you. Here's a different way to think of things. Let's say you have a variable in your application, right? There's a variable. But inside that variable, if the data changes, anywhere that variable is used in the application, anywhere, will update automatically. Right? And this isn't through like an external mechanism like zones or anything like that. This is just saying any place in the application. If it's referencing that value, it gets the latest value through something called a signal graph. So there's an algorithm behind the scenes that can let people know what's happening. Now, this was not our idea. All right, we'll admit it. We did not make this up. It's been around for a while. It's a design pattern, actually. And then the team that really made this popular was solid. And people really like to think that framework authors are in a fight behind the scenes, that we meet up, and we're going to like brawl, like, all right, React, Svelte, Vue, let's fight. It's not like that. We actually talk to each other and share ideas all the time. And this is one of the ideas we talked to Ryan Carniato from Solid, said, hey, what can we do here? Okay. Signal is the basic component, the basic reactivity primitive. So if a signal updates, it lets any place in application know that it's updated. And this is how it looks in the application. So very straightforward. In the template, that's just how you reference it. So it's pretty okay. How does that feel? Good or bad? Give me some voting. All right. All right, cool. But only vote on this. Do not vote on me. Okay. Computed is a little bit interesting because computed is this idea that if you want to derive a value based on other values, you use a computed. So let's say, here's a good example. Let's say full name. If you have someone's first name and their surname, you shouldn't really have to have a third variable to keep in sync called full name. So you can derive the full name at any time. And that's what a computed allows you to do. And then finally, there's the idea of an effect. An effect is just if one of those things you care about, one of those signals changes, the value changes there, you may want to do something as a reaction in response to that. So if you may change the selected product, you may want to fetch some data from the server based on that product, without you as a developer having to do if product ID does not equal the last product ID and there has been a click, there's been some type of interaction, right? All those things are very complicated to program and they create lots of errors. But in a reactive model, that smooths a lot of that out. So that's one of the areas for your applications. Again, I'm telling you the story through my experience with Angular, but this is still relevant to all of your applications. Developer experience helps you build supercharged applications. The next recipe is performance. That's the next ingredient. You got to have performant applications. What do users do if it takes too long for your application to load? They leave. Right? Somebody's like, yeah, they're gone. They're out of there. And users are so spoiled. Do you remember when we first started using the internet and you went to download something and it would take 30 seconds to 30 minutes and you waited? Now people can't imagine waiting 500 milliseconds. It's too long. How is that the world that we live in? Users are so spoiled. And I'm spoiled too, because if I go to a website and it takes longer than a second, I start clicking refresh. Like, wait a minute, let me clear the cache. Something must be wrong. Like, that's the world that we live in now. So performance really impacts your applications. Here are some of the things that we figured out to help. And we're hoping that other frameworks take advantage of the same idea. Like better lazy loading. So in my mind, I would want to be able to do this. If I click on that button that says load recommended movies, I wanted to lazy load that component. But I want to load it on demand. But to do something like that, you probably expect those changes to be where in your application would you expect? Maybe at the router level, maybe some configuration someplace. Well, here's what we think you can do in Angular. This is at the template level. We can do code splitting like this at the template level. We use this thing called a defer block. So we're saying defer the loading of the components of the content, defer that loading until one of the triggers are met. So how do you do that? On interaction with the load button, meaning if you click on it, then it'll load recommended movies. But while you're waiting for it to load, we can put some loading text. If there's an error during loading, you can display some text, and you can have a placeholder before you do any of it. Now, think about what you can build if your applications allow you to do things at this level of flexibility at the template for yourselves, and then think about what your applications look like when you can do things like that. You could really create some powerful stuff. And there are a bunch of triggers that you can use here. Lots and lots of ways to do this. So Bill.com, the company, they do, I guess, billing. I don't know what they use Angular. I don't know what they do. But they were able to reduce their initial bundle size by 50% by just throwing in those deferred tags through their applications, which is pretty rad, right? This is pretty cool that they could do this without it costing them infrastructure changes. Better performance. Hydration. Anybody using or adding hydration to their applications? Okay, she was ready. She put both hands up. Like, yes, we need it. So hydration is this idea that you could pre-render your application on the server side, but not, and ship just the visuals, right? Just the UI, but not ship the logic. So what does that mean for your loading times? Much faster. Right, much faster. Now, this is not related to Angular. This is all applications. So you can do this server-side rendering and hydration story. Applications get faster. So in Angular, it's actually, this is one area where it's quite complex to include this. You got to add that line. Again, that was a joke where you're supposed to go like, oh, ha, 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 that was so funny. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. So you just add this one line. And that allows you to provide this hydration story. Virgin Media, they did this, and then they saw a 72% reduction in LCP, largest contentful paint. Again, so in your applications, use hydration, use things like that, use server-side rendering. All these processes are so interesting. When we first started, everything was server-side rendered. This client-side rendering only came in the last 15 years. But when we all first started, everything was on the server. And now, what it benefits us is to have it both. Right? So do both. Do some client-side rendering, do some server-side rendering, and create better experiences for your users. Now, here's something that's a little bit special. What if, because right now with hydration, you got to send the whole page, then you got to send all of the bundle of the JavaScript. But what if I told you there's a possibility where you could selectively hydrate? Where you could say, well, I only care about this button. Let's say you are a vendor or e-commerce that sells concert tickets. You have all of these parts of the application that could be loaded and you could ship the JavaScript for. But what's the most important aspect of that page? The purchase button, that's right. The buy now button. You want that logic to be available immediately. That's the most important part. So this is something where Angular is hoping to influence the entire community. It's through incremental hydration. So here's an example of none of the things on the screen here have been loaded, except for the things that I've interacted with. And then as I interact with different parts, more components become loaded. So the JavaScript is then sent in real time during that time. This is much faster to load. Better user experience. You're definitely supercharging apps at that level. If I was building something like this, maybe this dashboard is really important because it's a mission-critical dashboard. One thing about our integrations, some people may have heard about this. There's an internal framework at Google called Wiz that powers things like Google Search, Gmail, Docs, and other of our products. And some people heard that we were merging together. It's true. We're already sharing code right now, so you're getting some of the best parts if you're using Angular. You don't have to be, but if you are, you're getting some of the best parts of Google's other frameworks built into Angular right now. Let me tell you one of the really cool things that we're doing. Think about this story. What if you've clicked on a component that has not been loaded yet? You clicked on a button. Nothing's been loaded yet. Right now, if you don't have any mechanism for this, you lose all of those user events. And that can lead to frustration. What we have gotten from the Wiz team is called event replay. So we're able to cache those events. And when we're caching those events, we can replay them once the JavaScript is available. And to add it, you just add one more line. I know, incredibly complex, but you just add one more line. All right, let's keep going. All right, this is the part where I'm going to need a lot of help from you. And I'm really, really pumped up about this. Let's talk about meaningful integrations with AI. All right, I had to see my time. I'm doing good. All right. When you're doing AI coding in general, or anything with AI, you have to think about meaningful ways to integrate it. I know we're all tired of chatbots everywhere because then it feels forced. It doesn't feel natural or organic. It feels forced. Think about how you can use AI in your applications to do things beyond human scale. One of the things that I care a lot about is AI in medical science. I care a lot about the idea of doctors being able to scan 1 million CTs or MRIs and then share that, surface that data quickly so patients can get the care that they need before because the doctor may not have time. You may be low in the list. That's really interesting to me. Thinking about how many lives could we save if we could accelerate medical care? That's interesting. Of course, we talked about coding this morning. We can make our coding time a little bit easier. This is really interesting. What about dynamic generation of application UIs based on data? So Kent talked about, the script header that he put at the top that could change it from light mode to dark mode. That way you don't bother your users. Think about going even further where AI could use data from your applications and then actually just define a new UI for you. Think about maybe someone who's low vision. Think about how the UI could magically get more organized for a person who's low vision. Think about the possibilities. Be inspired by these ideas. But I know you've been waiting for this part. All right, I made this application, and we're going to use it together. It's a learning. Anyone heard of Duolingo? Okay, I tried to call this NG lingo, and our legal team said NG no. It made me change it, so I call it Angular Learning Language Example App. I know. I know. They told me I can't do it. Let's see how this thing works. So I'm going to make it nice and huge. Here's what makes this application super interesting. I'm using AI to power it, and it can help me learn almost any language. Someone throw out a language that you speak. Don't just make it one that you don't speak, because then you won't know if it's right or not. Okay, duh. I mean, how could I not know that was what you were going to say? Okay, let's see. Uh-oh. Oh, this is probably going to go, oh, yeah, you know why? Because I don't have internet right now. Hold on, I'm going to fix this. How do you use a computer? I'm going to get my hotspot going because this is worth to see it actually work. And so I'm not on the Wi-Fi. And you might say, Mark, connect to the conference Wi-Fi. I cannot. Legal reasons. Anybody got those locked down laptops that you can't connect to anything in public? Okay, it's one of my moments. Perfect. Thank you. Give my wife a round of applause for saving the day. All right, let me get my hotspot on, discoverable. Nobody connect and use up my data. Don't even try it. You do not see anything. Okay, so now we're on the internet. Okay, now watch it. Okay, we refresh. Famous last words. Okay. Okay. Now my heart was racing. I'm like, it's going to show another error. Okay. Now I'm going to say this, and do not get mad at me for saying it wrong. Help me. This is a learning moment. Yasas. Okay, so yasas, I know it's not thank you, because thank you is much harder to say. Goodbye? No. Okay, hello. Okay, great. Oh, see, this is the one I really can't say. Evharisto. Oh, yeah, let's go. I know that's thank you. Okay, paracolo. No, okay. Oh, palacaro. Oh, paracalo. Okay, more. Oh, okay, yeah. Parácolo, yeah. Has visto? Ya estás. Okay. All right. I won't go through all the examples, but guess what I just showed you? This was dynamic. I did not code in the Greek translation into this application. I generate the data in real time using AI. This is in real time. Okay, so if we want to get really fun, let's see if I can go back. I'm gonna put in something for the nerds. Any nerds in the room? Let's see. Let's see. I don't know. This may or may not work. Now I'm living on the edge. All right. I had to say it like a Klingon. Dagangol. I have no idea what this means. Nope. Nope. Of course, the Anglo. Yeah, it's that. Okay. It's the Klingon way. All right. How did I do this? Because that's what's interesting to you, is how did I do it? Let's look at some code. So if we look at like the architecture model, the client app, which is just built in Angular, actually talks to just a node server. All right, I'm just talking to a node server here. And then the node server connects to the Gemini API. And then from the Gemini API, just like you would use a REST API, right? So it's the same kind of style of architecture. Then I send a response back to the server that I wrote in Node, and then we get the response back to the client app. Now, this is a very small example, but this is what I told Gemini. I said, this is what my data structure is. All right? Tell me the phrase, give me the options in an array, and then tell me what the answer is. Now, to program around this level is, pretty straightforward. But look at the power of that application, right? I didn't have to go and scour the internet. And sure, it won't be perfect. Sure, there'll be probably some problems where maybe the translations aren't 100% correct. So ideally, you would have some type of verification. But this is just like to inspire you to think about what is possible. And then here's what the code looks like. I know you have been dying to see code. First, did you know that when you request some data from something like the Gemini API, that you can specify the MIME type? Now, I'm not getting a block of text that I have to parse secondarily, right? Now I get actual JSON back. And that JSON, I can do what? JSON.parse. And guess what I can do? I can do other verification on that data. I can match it against a Zod schema if I care enough, right? There's lots of ways. And this is just with the native Gemini API. The prompt was just to generate 25 vocabulary words. But then I said, okay, here's what the input looks like, and then here's what that output. So there's that data structure. And this, again, is using a lower level API. There are higher level APIs that you can use, like GenKit, that can help abstract some of this as well. I get my request, and I wait for it the same way, send an asynchronous request, and then guess what? I send a response back to the user. That's not bad, but I got a better one for you. Now, this is really living on the edge. I'm being dead serious. I do not know if this is going to work, but I just want to try. Because I thought about, so that was one example where you could, I'm going to make it bigger, I promise. That was one example where we were doing something with like the Gemini API. I made a really bad e-commerce store. You got my cart and items and stuff up there, and then I can do something like add to cart, so that works. Okay, let me refresh though, because I want to show you what I want to do. I made an agent, and an agent is just an AI with a goal and tools, okay? Goal and tools. Check this out. I want to say hi, all right? Let's just see. If this doesn't work, I'm going to end the whole talk. Okay, good. It works. All right. What's the name of the store? NG Produce. So you can tell I'm not faking it. All right. Here's what's really interesting. What products are available? Okay. All right. So it can tell that my data that is local to my application, I gave it access to it, and now we can answer questions. So then, let's just see, how many products have dairy? We have 3 dairy products. None of this is programmed. None of this is programmed, right? So add all the non-dairy products to the cart. Now, this is the real task. Let's see if this even does anything. Okay, hold on. It said it, but what did it do? Let me walk you through this example. Let me explain to you what happened so that way it doesn't feel like magic, right? This is very attainable to you. So when I talk about having AI smarts in your applications, this is what I mean, right? This is very attainable to you. First, I have access to the Gemini API through Vertex AI in Firebase. Anybody heard of Firebase? Yes. Okay, so you've heard of this. Vertex AI is just our Google Cloud solution for some AI stuff. Firebase has a plugin built in that you can access Vertex AI, and which gives you access to different models. Like that's kind of like my proxy for the models. Think of it that way. So then I gave it a goal. I said, you are a superstar assistant shopper. You will be asked questions about the store. That was it. Now here's where the real interesting part comes in. Remember I told you an agent was an AI with a goal and tools. So I gave you the goal. You can help answer questions about the store. What were the tools? I just wrote a couple of basic functions that you would write anyway. Remember when I clicked add to cart and it did the add to cart? I exposed those to the AI. I said, here are the tools you have access to. So then when I started asking it questions, in the code, it comes back and says, I need to call this function with these parameters. You got control over it. So you actually call the functions programmatically, and you return the result back to the AI so it can know if it worked or not and what to do next, and then it returns the final result. Now, that's totally available to you. Now, think about what you can make. That was just my trivial example, right? But now think about what you can make, because think about this experience for our disabled users. People with food sensitivities who maybe don't know where to look for the food labels, right? Think about somebody who may be using a screen reader and they don't want to go through 70 pages. It just went off. Unbelievable. But they don't want to go through 70 pages of your products. But they can ask intelligently, not only get data about the product, but they can perform actions. Like this unlocks your applications to be very powerful. And you can do some really special things. I just need an agent to keep my screen on. Okay. If this is the formula, performance, developer experience, and AI smarts, all of these things are available to you now. No matter what you use. Again, I told this story through the focus of Angular, but what do you use, right? Maybe you use Java. I heard a lot of Java developers are here. So you use Java. So what's available to you? What tools are available to you to give a better developer experience, to give better performance? And what tools are available for AI smarts? See, start thinking a little bit bigger now about what's possible, because you know as well as I know, that non-dairy question would have been hard to program. Right? Because it would have depended so much on contextual information about the products that may or may not have been there. But through the power of the LLM, it was able to use the context of the billions of parameters trained on to be able to draw some good conclusions and to help the user accomplish their goal. So I don't show you this to make you think like, oh, I don't know what else I'm going to do in my career. I show you to inspire you. I want you to be inspired. I want you to go out and create the next wave of supercharged applications. I want you to create the best applications to serve your users in a way that they never imagined. Because that's the future. Because you're the future. All right, friends. Get out there and go build great apps.